What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Impeccable Crafts. Today I'm going to be showing you the 4-day process of me turning this 3D print into a mold and then casting it in resin. I think it came out pretty good. So here I am getting the 3D print off of my machine. Took about 8 hours. Something like that. It was about 8 hours. I just let it go overnight. It came out good. It could have been a little bit better. I think my filament was a little bit dry, so I got some uneven layer lines, but nothing I can't sand and prime out. This right here is the mold casing that I designed in Tinkercad, which I've used in some of my previous videos. Something simple. I just wanted a 2-part casing so I could easily pull it apart once it's cured. Now I knew that yellow filament was dry just by how good this came out. If the actual Mario Planner came out with this quality, there would have been less sanding and less priming, definitely. But everything came out good. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at both now under some nice bright lights. So you can see I left just about a 1/4 inch on each side. You want a nice amount of room, wiggle room. You don't want your mold to be too thin or else nothing will be supported in there. And you can see right there at the bottom is where the little line shift. I don't think it was an actual layer shift. I'm pretty sure it was the filament because it's old, but it's the only yellow one I had. I wanted to do it yellow just for aesthetics. But I am going to sand and prime everything out of there. So I'm not too worried about the little layer lines. You can see my mold case. Again, that bad boy came out perfect. Really, really good print on that. And again, this is brand new filament. I literally just opened up the package a couple of days ago. So that's what makes me think that my filament was a little dry. Or it could have been a little moist. Could have had a little bit of moisture in there. Don't know. So here you can see after a full day of priming and sanding, it looks pretty good. I still have some little areas that I want to sand out there. You can see on the top, on the bottom. I didn't worry about the inside at all. But the outside's coming out really good. Really, really good. So I'll probably do one more little session of sanding and priming, because you do got to wait at least a few hours for the primer to dry before you can sand it. So after maybe another few hours of priming and sanding, I feel it's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice wet sand. Most of those big layers that were on there are gone, so that was my main goal. This is the primer I used. Got this at Lowe's, about $6. It works magic. So I am going to give this one just a quick wet sand, just to smooth it out, give a nice little gloss. And when I do mold this, it's going to come out matte. It's not going to be gloss unless I give it maybe a clear coat, but I'm not going to do that. My main goal with this is to make something out of concrete in the future, but I am going to cast it in resin when it's done, just to give a nice little presentation. But I do want to make everything in concrete eventually. That's my goal. I want to start making more concrete molds. So this process went fairly quick. I did all this in about 10 minutes. Just getting out the little layer lines, the little bumps from the primer. There was residue in there, and just to smooth it out. And you can see the finish is nice and smooth for the most part. There are some little bumps on there. So this right here is a few hours after I did the wet sand. I just went in and had dinner. Came back, everything was nice and dry. So you can see there is little areas that I can clean up a little bit better, but it is a million times better than the inside, which I didn't touch. So this is the next day. I gave it one more little sand and prime on each side. Very light. So I'm going to actually make the mold here. I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping I don't mess up. This is going to take close to 2 pounds of silicone, and anyone that deals with silicone knows that that stuff is pricey. So I don't want to mess it up. And this is my technique with making the molds. I use tape as the bottom, and then I super glue around everything. And you can see I'm using these clamps just to make sure my mold doesn't come apart, has a nice seal. I went ahead and sped this process up because I was taking my time. I actually gave the clamps a little bit of glue on there also. And I also sprayed it with mold release again. I sprayed it initially, but I just wanted to add a little bit to it. So now I'm going to go ahead and weigh out my silicone. I use Mold Star 15 Slow. It's a platinum cure silicone. Now, after thinking about all this, I could have done this on my resin printer, which would have saved a lot of time. There would have been no layer lines. It would have came out perfect. But I didn't have any tin cure silicone on hand. So to me, it was worth it because I had 2 gallons or a gallon of the Mold Star 15. So again, I could have did it on my resin printer, but I didn't have the tin cure silicone. And I really like the Mold Star 15. It's a little bit thinner than the stuff I use for my resin prints, so it flows very nice into every little crevice, gets out all the detail you're trying to get. Whoa, had a little bump there with the camera. Had to make sure everything was okay. So here we go, stirring. And I went a little under 2 pounds here, which is okay. It wasn't bad. Stirring, getting all the sides, all the bottom, all that good stuff. And it was at this moment here I realized I had a crack in my cup. Holy but Jesus, no. Okay, so that was a big mistake on my part. I'm not sure if I cracked my cup while mixing. I don't think so. I think it was already cracked. But yeah, it was a huge mess, and I lost, I'm not too sure, maybe 10 ounces of silicone. And I was just talking about how expensive this stuff is. So there it is. Live and learn. But the show goes on. So I mixed it up, and I feel like I would have had enough if I didn't spill it and have to waste it and mop it up. So I had to go ahead and mix another small batch of silicone, which wasn't an issue. I'm just glad I was able to move on from that little accident. So I think I mixed up about 10 more ounces, about 5 ounces of each. So make sure you check your cups before you mix your silicone, and don't be a dummy like me. But live and learn. We all live and we all learn through mistakes. I know I make lots of mistakes. Not too big. This was a big one though, but it's all right. So let's go ahead and finish off this mold. Very, very nice. I love the way this Mold Star 15 flows. So pretty. So there is that. So I could have finished this later on tonight and demolded it, but you know, life calls, life duty. So I just let it go, let it cure, and then I waited overnight. So here we are the next day. The mold is nice and hard. This is the moment of truth. I'm really hoping everything came out decent. Again, this was a lot of silicone. It was about 2 pounds, and I lost close to a ½ pound during my little accident there. So it was actually a little bit harder to pull apart than I would have imagined. So I had to bust out the tools here just to give it a little pry, make it a little bit easier on my weakened muscles here. But once I did that, it came out pretty good. The outside, that is, as far as I can see. But I could tell that everything cured nicely. There was no problems with inhibition, which I was kind of worried about with that primer because I've never used it before. I've used normal primer, but I don't think it would have been a problem. I would have heard about it while researching. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit of the flashing around it here. Then I'm going to start tugging on it. I'm going to get my master out of there to check everything out. So this was really, really difficult. So I figured the easiest way was just to turn it inside out. And this platinum silicone doesn't have any issue with tugging on it. It's fairly tear resistant. So everything came out good. There were just a few tiny little bubbles on the bottom, but that's definitely okay. I don't think it's going to be a real issue. Because again, my main goal with this is to eventually cast it with some concrete. And as you know, concrete has a bunch of little crevices, a bunch of little cracks. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. Just going to clean up a little bit here with my cuticle cutter. I like them to look as pretty as possible, even if it's an ugly mold. I like to have a nice, clear area around the initial hole. So that's a nice tip right there, those cuticle cutters, to clean up some flashing, or you can just pull it off like that. So everything looks pretty good. There was a little bit of primer that stuck to the mold. I guess I didn't let the primer cure long enough, but again, no problem. The first thing I'm going to cast out of this is resin, just to get something quick because I don't have any concrete on hand. So some of that might come off on the resin cast, but perfectly okay, perfectly fine. Just testing things out here. Looking at the inside, I could see everything came out good. Everything cured perfect. So now, only one thing to do, and that's cast this bad boy in some resin. So, I think I'm going to do it in yellow and add a little bit of this gold flake stuff that I got there, the mica powder. I know if I just add this yellow, it might come out a little too transparent. And I want to see how this gold is going to come out. I don't have any really big cups, so I just cut a water bottle, one-time use, to mix up my resin. So I have a little bit of this stuff that my girlfriend gave me left over. I'm really hoping it's going to be enough. So I'm just going to pour it all, and we'll see what happens. I'm hoping it comes out good. At this point, I'm about 3 days into this project, so I really don't want to mess it up. Trying to get all the resin that I can out of there because I'm not too sure if I'm going to have enough. I know I could have probably filled this up with water, thinking about it now, to get a rough estimate as to how much resin, but there was just a little bit left in each bottle, so I went for the gusto and poured it all in there. And once I mixed in the mica powder, I realized that this is going to look really, really cool. The color on there is beautiful. Here I'm praying to myself, hoping that I don't mess it up because I've had a few hiccups during this process. And bombs away. Once I started filling it up at this point, I realized that I had plenty of resin, thankfully. And here I'm kind of just pulling it apart, making sure everything gets into every little crevice. You'll see me tapping it, slapping it, jumping it up and down, plopping it back down on my desk here, just to try to get rid of some of the bubbles in the little corners. I don't have a pressure pot yet. I figured if I had a pressure pot, I could have put this in there, or a pressure caster, pressure pot. Am I thinking food? Anyways, sidetrack. Squirrel. If I had one of the pressure contraptions, I could have got out all the bubbles in here. But I don't got one, so we're just going to roll with it. Tap, tap, tap. Pat, pat, pat. I don't know if this helps, but I figure it can loosen up some of the bubbles and some of the actual question marks on there. Try to get them floated up to the top. So here we are, about 30 hours later, 4 days worth of work. I really, really hope it came out good. I was a little nervous here. A little nervous. It was cured for the most part. It was really hard, but I anticipated the top thinner pieces being a little soft. But after 30 hours, I knew that it should be decent enough to demold. So this was even harder to get off than the master. So I had to lose the gloves just to get a better grip. And once I did that, it came off no problem. And there it is. As I imagined, it was just a little soft, a little bendy. But it came out really, really good. I'm super, super happy with the outcome. Trying to figure out what kind of plant I'm going to put in this. So in a future video, I'll most likely be casting this in some concrete, and we'll make some concrete planters. And I realized how heavy this was. It had a nice amount of weight to it for being resin. I wasn't used to something that heavy. I'm used to making small little resin trinkets. Well, there it is. From 3D print to mold to resin cast. All in about 4 days. I'm pretty happy with it. I think I'm going to go buy some Venus flytraps and put them in there. And there it is outside. Came out really cool. I almost filled it up with some of that potting soil down there and added one of these little plants, little succulents over there in the background to it. But I think I'm going to wait, give it another day or two to get a nice cure. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you take some of this process and use it towards your own projects. Thanks for watching.